All right.
All right.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rena Larson, and I am one of the Child Care Center licensing training specialists within the Child Care Center's licensing unit of DHS. Today, we are presenting a training on behavior guidance requirements. The content for today's training is applicable to licensed child care centers in Minnesota. This training is for anyone who works in or is planning to work in a licensed child care center. This includes all staff, directors, and license holders. Today, I'm joined by Lisa Mills, my training partner, specialist, and our assistant manager of our unit, Michelle McGregor, as well as a few of our licensors, Noko Sands, Jen Ballinger, and Keith Henderson. I will be presenting our material to you today while Lisa will forward the slides, and our licensors will be assisting with any questions that may come up in our chat box. This presentation is being recorded, and our hope is to have the recording posted to our webpage in the near future. We have a very large amount of participants today, so please allow time for our panelists to get back to you in the chat. And then if we have time at the end too, we might be able to address some questions live that have come in through the chat that we feel would be applicable to everyone. Today's session is a Develop approved training. And if you have a Develop account, your training hours will be entered within a few days. If you know that you've provided your Develop ID when you registered and have yet to see the hours added to your learning record after, say, 4 or 5 days, please reach out to us via email and we will be happy to get back to you as soon as possible. But again, please allow a couple of days to pass before you search for the training to show on your record, as it does take a bit of time for us to enter all of the participants and as well for Develop to process those entries. But we are truly happy to have all of you here today. So today's training is a 2-hour training. We will take a short break about halfway through the presentation. Our learning objectives for all of you are that when you leave today, you will understand the behavior guidance requirements for licensed child care centers. You'll be able to apply positive, developmentally appropriate guidance methods and carry out behavior guidance documentation requirements. So for behavior guidance requirements, there we go. Minnesota Rule 9503.0055 subpart 1 lists the general requirements of behavior guidance for licensed child care centers. Often, providers and staff will focus primarily on the prohibited actions, but Minnesota Rule is meant to focus on how behavior guidance should be carried out to positively impact children and their behavior in licensed child care centers. License holders must develop written behavior guidance policies and procedures and see that those policies and procedures are carried out. The policies and procedures must ensure that each child is provided with a positive model of acceptable behavior, that they are tailored to the developmental level of the children the center is licensed to serve, redirect children and groups away from problems towards constructive activities in order to reduce conflict, teach children how to use acceptable alternatives to problem behavior in order to reduce conflict, protect the safety of children and staff persons, and provide immediate and directly related consequences for a child's unacceptable behavior. A positive model of acceptable behavior. According to Minnesota Rules Part 9503.0055 subpart 1, items A, centers must have behavior guidance policies and procedures that ensure each child is provided with a positive model of acceptable behavior. License holders are responsible for making sure that policies and procedures are followed and carried out. Positive modeling in childcare can include, but is not limited to, visuals and pictures of positive behaviors used in the classroom, staff noticing and reinforcing positive behavior, consistent language and behavior guidance techniques from all staff in the program, and learning activities to support conflict resolution and self-regulation. When stating positive behavior expectations, say what you want them to do, not what you don't want them to do. If you tell children, don't run when walking down the hall to play outside, and the child skips instead, they're technically not running, but they are not accomplishing what you wanted them to do, which was to walk down the hall. Stating positive behavior expectations would instead be to say, please walk. Noticing and affirming positive behavior is the absence of bringing attention to negative behaviors. This would be acknowledging and praising behaviors you want to continue and strengthen in your classroom. For example, when it's time to come to group and you need the children to put their activities away and come to the carpet, find children that are following the instructions and recognize them for it. Oh my, look how nicely Theo is putting our books away. Thank you, Theo. Or, Ellie, I see that you are ready for group today. Great work putting your puzzle away and coming to the carpet like I asked. So now let's take a look at an example of what positive modeling can look like in a preschool classroom. Jeremiah, 5 years old, and has been at the center for 3 years where positive guidance strategies have been used. The staff person in the block area observes this interaction. 2 children are arguing about who will play with a truck. Jeremiah notices his classmates arguing and says to them, "What's going on?" He listens to both children describe their side of the situation and then facilitates a discussion that lasts about 5 minutes. He rephrased the situation when helpful, paraphrasing one child's suggestion of giving up the truck, and asks them, "What do you think of that idea?" The other child shakes his head and holds the truck tighter. Jeremiah then says, "I don't think he's ready to give up the truck yet." And both of the classmates that were arguing now just move on to other play. The children accept the result of the discussion, possibly more so because it was helped by a peer and not coming from an adult, but it was also the procedure for the center to support conflicts in this way and has been positively modeled by the staff. This is an example of 9503.0055 subpart 1 item A using positive models and also meets the requirements in 9503.0055 subpart 1 item D to teach children how to use acceptable alternatives to problem behavior in order to reduce conflict. This example provides a view of what Minnesota Rules Part 9503.0055 subpart item A using positive models and Minnesota Rules 9503.0055 subpart 1 item D to teach children how to use acceptable alternatives to problem behavior in order to reduce conflict can look like in action. When caregivers model the behaviors and communication they desire to be used in the classroom consistently, it has been shown to impact children's behavior and communication in positive ways that can help with effective classroom management. As far as tailored to the developmental level, according to Minnesota Rules Part 9503.0055 subpart 1 item B, centers must have behavior guidance policies and procedures that are tailored to the developmental level of the children that the center is licensed to serve. In each area of a child's development, there are certain behaviors that are typical during developmental stages. Caregivers may see these behaviors as challenging, but they are to be expected. You may find it helpful to plan positive ways you can address challenging behavior. Toddler behaviors that are expected but may be challenging to caregivers are biting, saying no, high levels of activity, rarely staying still, and insisting on doing things independently, like using the statement, "I can do it myself." Preschool behaviors that are expected but may be challenging to caregivers are fears and vivid imaginations, fear of the dark or monsters, etc., excluding others from play, telling others what to do, and tattling or telling on others. School-age behaviors that are expected but may be challenging to caregivers are being overly concerned with fairness, lying or stretching the truth, tattling or telling on others, and cheating at games or getting upset and not wanting to play. In addition to a child's development, expectations about behavior are driven by cultural values and preferences. For example, in some cultures, children are not expected to feed themselves independently until they are 3 or 4 years old. In other cultures, children are expected to feed themselves in late infancy and toddlerhood. In your daily interactions with families and children, you should remind yourself that culture and family priorities can also influence children's behaviors. So for developmentally appropriate behavior in childcare, specific behaviors are done to have a need met. A child has a need that they can't meet on their own. Some behavior plans call this the function of the behavior, meaning, what is the child getting by acting this way? Children's language development impacts their communication, verbal and nonverbal, and in everything in between. Have you ever caught yourself expecting a child to always use the right words to communicate? To know what we mean when we say, use your words, has the acceptable language been modeled? The nonverbal communication occurring simultaneously is very significant as well. Positive or negative responses reinforce behaviors. What you reinforce, you get more of. Repeated behaviors are a conditioned response. Staff, parents, and other children in the group can reinforce behaviors by responding. When responding to behaviors, it's important to consider if a child is acquiring physical, social, emotional, and cognitive skills as expected. If not, this may cause unacceptable behaviors from frustration when interacting with a group of typically developing peers. There are times when behaviors can arise by children trying to fix a physical need that are okay at home, but not in a childcare setting, such as removing an item of clothing that feels itchy, tight, or wet, etc., using screen time to self-soothe, or freely going outside to play without direct supervision. If a child has not learned how to resolve these issues in the childcare setting, they may fall back on another behavior that might not be acceptable in groups of children. As well, in childcare settings, some behaviors require a response to protect the safety of a child and other children, while that behavior in another setting, such as home, might be ignored until a better behavior could be responded to. Let's talk about infants. Individual children develop at very different rates, but they usually follow patterns closely related to their age. However, there will always be exceptions to this rule. Some general expectations at different ages can be that babies from birth to 1 year are not developmentally able to understand rules, and they have no concept of bad or good behavior, as they act on instinct and are unaware of the world around them. Most children at 12 months do not understand that they are a separate person. They like to be with people they know well and may be upset with strangers. They respond in different ways at different times to similar situations. One day they may laugh at something, then cry or be upset by it the next day. They can follow a simple instruction and will make sounds, call, and shout out to gain adults' attention. Typical toddlers by 16 months, children are usually more aware of themselves, but do not yet understand that others are separate beings. They are typically into everything, exploring without ideas of what is safe to do or touch. They can be very possessive, particularly of the people that they love. They do not like to see their parent holding another child. They can be easily distracted from behaviors which are unwanted, but trying to reason with them will not work well. Their mood swings from joy to fury in seconds and are easily frustrated, and this sometimes results in shouting and throwing things. By 18 months, a child is usually more aware of themselves as distinct from others, but can seem totally self-centered, unconcerned about the effect their actions will have on others. They are responsive briefly to being told no, but needs to be repeated frequently, reinforced by actions such as moving them away from danger. Children this age are very determined to have their own way and are easily frustrated at not being able to do things for themselves. Sometimes a child at this age responds to frustration by throwing, screaming, or shouting, and may try to assert themselves by refusing to comply with adults and showing defiance. A typical 2-year-old has a clearer self-image, but still does not appreciate others as separate people. They may be able to play alone for up to about 20 minutes if they know a trusted adult is nearby. And they're also very possessive of their own toys. Everything is mine. Sharing has not yet become a way of life and needs to be treated as a developmental stage and not a behavior that requires consequences. They need to be shown how to share by frequent and sensitive adult intervention. It's very helpful to have more than 2 items of popular toys available at any time. Typical 2-year-olds do not like to wait for demands to be met. Impatience is normal. They will have frequent temper tantrums when frustrated, even if you're not aware of the cause. They can usually be distracted from doing this, but you need to guard against rewarding them for screaming by giving your attention and to teach them alternative positive ways to gain an adult's attention. They are now able to show and express feelings of affection, fear, anger, distress, and can understand when others are upset, hurt, excited, or happy, and will respond appropriately. Knowing that toddlers are actively exploring and learning about their environment with short attention spans and active bodies, behaviors such as pushing, hitting, or biting other children that are close to them, dumping toys and walking away from them, and being unable to pay attention well for stories and large group activities may very likely arise in childcare settings. Developmentally appropriate behavior guidance for toddlers in childcare settings need to include being allowed to freely explore their environment safely, positive one-to-one interactions with adults, space to interact with other children, and space and time to practice self-soothing and self-regulation. As for preschoolers, a typical 3-year-old knows themselves well and is becoming increasingly independent. They are often resistant to being told what to do and how to do it, usually thinking that they know best. They will go happily with people they know and are much less worried about strangers. They are becoming more sociable and less shy. They have usually developed the ability to wait when necessary, but be realistic. Executive functioning is just in the beginning phases of development. Executive function development impacts the ability to control impulses. They are willing to discuss what they need to do and to work on appropriate behaviors and responses. They usually have a good command of language and therefore it's less likely to have a tantrum or behave rebelliously, but still have sudden mood swings and sometimes behave in extreme ways without necessarily knowing the reason why. They like to be seen as well behaved and they know what to do when taken into a wide range of social situations. They can appreciate what is going on around them and fit in with the feelings and moods of others. They have a real need for approval and want to be loved and appreciated by adults. A typical 4-year-old can take part in discussions, negotiate, and reason, and are friendly and can be helpful to both other children and adults. They understand their own feelings and are therefore more likely to respond in a predictable way and to express feelings verbally. They are much more self-controlled and can control bodily movements as well. They are less dependent on caregivers and like to do things with other adults and are mostly able to behave appropriately in different situations, understanding what to do, where, and when. 4-year-olds like to play in a small group, not necessarily with friends, but with those showing an interest in the same activity. They can move between groups happily and independently. They take turns in group games with other children, but usually need an adult to help with the rules of the game. They enjoy imaginative play and can continue for considerable lengths of time with complicated ideas. The typical 4-year-old can now understand concepts like yesterday, today, and tomorrow, as well as now, before, and later. Typical behaviors that can cause caregivers to struggle with their classroom management are that 4-year-olds will argue their case and state their own ideas quite strongly, sometimes blame others for their own misbehavior and deny their own part in it. This is part of a need for approval and a growing awareness of consequences. They will sometimes behave badly to gain a reaction from an adult. Any attention can be seen as better than none. And they may swear and use forbidden language, again, as a way to gain attention. So for preschoolers in the childcare setting, knowing that preschoolers are beginning cooperative play, can label and discuss their feelings, and that those feelings can be strong with impulsive reactions. Behaviors such as hitting or pushing someone nearby if they are angry or frustrated, name calling or teasing, extreme emotional reactions to injustice or frustration, or taking toys away from other children may arise in childcare settings. developmentally appropriate behavior guidance for preschoolers in childcare settings need to include clear, consistent ground rules for how to treat others, opportunities for pretend play and social interactions, positive modeling and facilitation of interactions, visual reminders of behavior expectations, and the ability to practice self-regulation and conflict resolution. By the time children are beginning elementary school, children are typically more independent and self-controlled, but still need the approval of adults to support their self-esteem because they know and feel ashamed when their behavior is unacceptable. They will sometimes be overactive, aggressive, and argumentative, will argue with parents, but not usually with teachers or other adults when denied something. Children in the early ages of elementary school need to be given ways to regain control when angry. Taking some time to think or take a walk while supported by an adult usually helps a child calm themselves. They like to assert themselves by boasting and sometimes threatening others and still need adult intervention to assist in arguments with peers. School-age children like games, which enable them to be competitive as individuals rather than in teams. And they love to be the best and can be very purposeful and persistent to achieve this. As mentioned earlier, in each child's area of child's development, there are certain behaviors that are typical during developmental stages. Caregivers may see these behaviors as challenging, but they are to be expected. You may find it helpful to plan positive ways you can address challenging behavior as well as classroom management techniques. So what are the behaviors trying to do? Behavior may be a child telling another child to start or stop doing something or an attempt to communicate something. Communication is a developmental task. May not be the best way to communicate, but typically developing children will use their most effective form of communication to get the desired response. Behavior may be a child's way to resolve or fix a physical need, to move if they are restless, to get sensory input, to remove or create distance from something unpleasant, like an unpleasant smell or sound or space. If a child's development has not progressed to provide them with appropriate ways to self-soothe, problem solve, or verbally communicate discomfort, unacceptable behaviors can result. So now let's talk about redirection. In childcare settings, verbal or nonverbal redirection are very effective ways to reduce conflict. Examples of redirection that childcare staff could use are moving a child away from the conflict either before or after the challenging behavior occurs, offering a child an acceptable alternative activity and redirecting them toward that activity using phrases like, I see you are, I wonder if you are feeling, let's see if we can find another toy you like, and then working side by side with a child to model calming strategies. However, while redirection can be very effective, not all behaviors can or should be addressed with redirection. Let's consider a situation where one child hits another. Hitting is not okay. That is the basic ground rule. If you find that the hitting was a response out of frustration by asking, he knocked your building over? Then in this case, the child felt unfairly treated, but lacked impulse control or communication skills to resolve it in another way. First, you should reinforce the basic ground rule and then redirect the children. Here, redirection may be the best way to resolve the conflict. Whereas, let's say the hitting was initiated because the child wanted a block that another child had, so they hit them to make that child upset, possibly to intimidate them and get the block that they wanted. Here, an immediate and directly related consequence may be a better way to resolve this conflict. So let's talk about immediate and directly related consequences. According to Minnesota rules, Part 9503.0055, Subpart 1, Item F, centers must have behavior guidance policies and procedures that provide immediate and directly related consequences for a child's unacceptable behavior. This slide lists two different examples of behaviors that may occur in a classroom: immediate and directly related consequences are consequences that occur right when the behavior occurs, as is possible, and are straightforward so that the child can relate the consequences to their own behavior. For example, a toddler is throwing puzzle pieces. Immediate and directly related consequences look like putting the puzzle away and then help the child find a different activity. Immediate and directly related consequences do not look like giving the child a consequence of denying them their comfort item, like a stuffed animal or their blanket at nap time. A preschooler is running ahead of the class to get to an activity first. Immediate and directly related consequences look like having the child walk at the back of the line the rest of the way to the activity. Immediate and directly related consequences do not look like having the child walk at the back of the line all week whenever the group walks to an activity. So here's some do's and don'ts. Immediate and directly related consequences are teaching opportunities to learn a more effective way to communicate a need. For example, impulse control, self-regulation, or conflict resolution skills, and helps children understand that teachers want them to feel safe. When communicating with the child about the consequence, it should be able to be said in a calm, normal tone of voice, just like you would say, the sky is blue today. Immediate and directly related consequences have a cause and effect relationship to the child's behavior. The consequences must be reasonable, doable, and make sense in terms of severity and duration. Appropriate consequences motivate children to change their behavior because the need for the behavior is understood and a better alternative has been learned. Examples of consequences that are not appropriate or directly related would be not letting a child have their blanket at nap time because that is their comfort item. 9503.0050 subpart 6 requires that bedding must be provided for each child in care. Sitting out during large motor time for running in the hall. This would be a separation. Any of the prohibited actions in subpart 3 that we will discuss on the following slide. Consequences that could result in shaming the child. For example, publicly posted behavior charts or good day, bad day notices hung on the children's cubbies, etc. So as I mentioned, let's talk about prohibited actions. License holders must ensure that policies exist and are enforced that prohibit a staff person from the following. Physical punishment, also referred to in Minnesota rule as corporal punishment. Corporal punishment includes, but is not limited to, rough handling, shoving, hair pulling, ear pulling, shaking, slapping, kicking, biting, pinching, hitting, and spanking. Emotional abuse. Emotional abuse includes, but is not limited to, name calling, ostracism, shaming, making derogatory remarks about the child or the child's family, and using language that threatens, humiliates, or frightens the child. Separation of a child from the group unless less intrusive methods of guiding the child's behavior have been attempted and the child's behavior threatens the well-being of the child or other children in the center. More information on allowed separations from the group can be found on Minnesota Rule 9503.0055 subpart 4 and will be discussed later on in this training. Punishments for lapses in toilet habits, for example, potty accidents. Withholding food, light, warmth, clothing, or medical care as a punishment for unacceptable behavior. This includes taking a child's blanket away during nap time, withholding a special snack, or removing a child's plate during mealtime due to inappropriate behaviors by the child. The use of physical restraint other than to physically hold a child when restraining a child is necessary to protect them from others or others from harm. And the use of mechanical restraints such as tying. So let's talk about some scenarios you might encounter. Some common behaviors you might find in childcare settings are something, so what we want to do is think about what would be appropriate behavior guidance for the child and what would not be. Remember to consider the age of the child and what we know about the typical development for that age and what they need in childcare settings. A toddler takes a toy away from another toddler. When staff add more of the favorite toys to the environment because they notice that the toys being taken away are favorites of many children, the staff are using behavior guidance that is tailored to the developmental level of toddlers in Minnesota Rule 9503.0055 subpart 1B. When staff engage in one-on-one playtime with toddlers to engage children and give positive attention because the child is walking around taking toys from random children, the staff would be using redirection from Minnesota Rule 9503.0055 subpart 1C. Think about this. Is the behavior by the toddler developmentally appropriate? What may have happened before the behavior? Is this behavior occurring more at a specific time, during a routine, a transition, or an activity? Does it occur more often when they're tired or hungry? Think about how you could modify the environment, equipment, or routine. Considering classroom routines may improve behavior outcomes for all children by providing proactive classroom management. Proactive classroom management provides more control for the staff and is less dependent on a series of unpredictable events from children in the group. Proactive classroom management considers how the environment affects children's behavior. For example, large open spaces can encourage running. Smaller, well-defined areas discourage running, but are not too small to crowd the children. Are children easily distracted because the areas are undefined and the space encourages drifting and distractions? Is the block area in a high traffic area where blocks get knocked over more often? Is the book area next to a loud area like dramatic play? Also consider rotating equipment. Children may be bored with the same materials. Popular toys are best to be available in multiples, so children are expected to share and take turns too often as well. Is this equipment developmentally appropriate? Is it too hard or too easy for the group? Are there too few pieces of equipment, or is the equipment too cluttered? Consider reducing overstimulation from the environment, such as lighting and sound. Is there a quiet or safe area that adults support, such as making sure one child is there at a time and reinforcing the expectation that if another child approaches the space, the adult will ask them to wait somewhere else until the space is available? The example of a teacher telling the toddler that if they take the toy away one more time, they will not get a treat at snack time is not developmentally appropriate for a toddler and is an example of using a prohibited action by a staff person. Now let's say a toddler refuses to join group time. When the staff bring the child to the carpet and sit with them in their lap for group time, they are demonstrating an immediate and directly related consequence from 9503.0055 subpart 1F. It is very important to note, though, that if the child is trying to get down and staff hold them there, it could turn into a prohibited action because the child is now being restrained and prevented from freely moving. When staff sing an engaging song that has each child's name in it to welcome them to join group time, the staff are demonstrating how this action is tailored to the developmental level of toddlers from 9503.0055 subpart 1B. Using this technique is highly successful and uses positive reinforcement tactics, whereas if staff point out to the rest of the children that the toddler is not coming to the group area, that's prohibited because it is shaming the child. Take time to consider, is the behavior, again, by the toddler developmentally appropriate? What may have happened before this behavior? Is this behavior occurring more often at a specific time during a routine transition or activity? Is it happening more often when they're tired or hungry? How could the environment, equipment, or routine be modified? What classroom management techniques might be used to encourage children to participate in group time? Feel free to use the chat box here to offer your ideas to the group. And I will try to peek over at some of the suggestions and read them aloud if you feel like you've got any nuggets that people would really love to hear. As far as a preschooler ripping children's artwork off the wall in anger, What do we want to think about, and what action should be taken when this happens? When staff tell the child this is not okay and stand in front of the artwork before more is ripped down, and the child is given choices to go to the calm down area, to take some deep breaths, or ask for help, the staff person is using positive behavior guidance by helping the child see an acceptable alternative to their behavior from 9503.0055 subpart 1D. If after the child calms down, the staff person helps put the artwork back up on the wall approximately 5 minutes later, that would be an example of an immediate and directly related consequence from 9503.0055 subpart 1F. Having the child miss outside time later that morning because they are in the office with the assistant director is prohibited because it is a separation. Think about this behavior by the preschooler. Is it developmentally appropriate? What may have happened before the behavior? Is this behavior occurring more at a specific time, during a routine, transition, or activity, more often when they're tired or hungry? Again, how could the environment, equipment, or routine be modified? What classroom management techniques might be used to encourage children to express their emotions without hurting others? I'm just checking the chat here just to see if anyone jotted any ideas that we would read aloud. I don't see any. Okay. So we'll move on to the next example. What are some things that we can do when children use inappropriate language? Helping children understand that those words are not okay and giving them choices of other words to use to communicate their feelings are both examples of providing acceptable alternatives to problem behavior from 9503.0055 subpart 1D. Staff telling the child that their dad is bad for using those words is prohibited because the staff are making derogatory comments about the child's family. Putting the child's name on a behavior chart posted in the classroom where everyone can see is prohibited because it is shaming the child. Again, is this behavior by the preschooler developmentally appropriate? What may have happened before the behavior? When is it occurring? Is it more often when they're tired and hungry? Again, think about how could the environment, equipment, or routine be modified, and what classroom management techniques might be used to encourage children to express their emotions without using inappropriate language. Think about which types of positive guidance are better suited for the behavior in question. I want to read aloud. We did have one share. For toddlers, we will usually focus on the ones that are at circle in hoping that the ones that are not there will come to join. And yes, I cannot stress enough how that works. Toddlers want that praise. They want their name included in the song. So if they know that as soon as they're sitting there, it's their turn to have their name mentioned in the song, or just, chatting it up with the ones that are in circle, it is very effective. So thank you so much for sharing. Okay, now let's talk about another example. Our final example is a scenario where a preschool age child is pinching children nearby during group time. Telling the child to sit on their hands or to move to another area where they have more space for themselves is providing an acceptable alternative to problem behavior from 9503.00551 1D. Sitting next to the child during group time and facilitating discussion about other things they could do instead of pinching is an example of guidance that is tailored to the developmental level of preschoolers from 9503.0055 subpart 1B, and showing a positive model of acceptable behavior from 9503.0055 subpart 1A. Pinching the child to attempt to show them how it feels is prohibited because pinching is corporal punishment. So again, is this behavior by the preschooler developmentally appropriate? What may have happened before the behavior? Is this occurring more often at a specific time during a routine, transition, or activity? Again, more often when they're tired or hungry? And how could the environment, equipment, or routine be modified? What classroom management techniques might be used to prevent children from hurting one another? Think about which types of positive behavior guidance are better suited for the behavior in question. All right, well, we kind of arrived at a nice little time to take a short, I think we can take about a 10-minute break so we can come back at 12:52. Let everyone stretch, use the bathroom, whatever you need to do, grab a snack, and we will come back and we will start talking about common unacceptable behaviors in childcare. So we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Thanks all.
And if just as a reminder, we have our panel available for any questions you may have. So while you think about what we've just discussed, if there's anything you'd like to add or any questions you might have, now would be a good time to do that.
Okay, welcome back from break, everyone. It's 12:52, and we are going to get started again. So we've had some questions coming up in the chat, and so just kind of wondering if we have any licensors that would like to discuss biting in toddler rooms and what are some good techniques that they've seen in place to work around toddler biting. So Jen, Oko, or Keith, any of you guys want to address that one? Otherwise, if not, I can kind of speak to how I handled it. Just so you know my history, I have kind of held every role in the childcare world and spent the majority of my career as a center director. So with biting, a lot of the time, so what we would try to do, first things you need to consider is really studying what sorts of things are happening before that behavior occurs. So we would very often find that the toddler particularly might bite right before lunch. So that might be a hunger-driven need for biting. The other one that we found would be the crowding, making children, toddlers wait too long for an activity. Say they're all waiting to go outside, and so you have them kind of lined up by the door and you're trying to get everyone's jackets on. And well, I know that's challenging. If you wait too long, that crowding, a very, very typical behavior is for a toddler to bite another toddler. So if you know that you have one that is struggling with that biting, kind of making sure they have an activity to keep themselves busy, or not having them be the first one with their jacket on, waiting and waiting and waiting as more children start to crowd around them and longer and longer. Yeah, so if it's space, that's an issue. Really ensuring that a child that has a larger need of a space bubble has that space. So really, like we had mentioned, do think about the environment and what's going on before that behavior occurs to get into it. Again, also too, if they're biting because they are wanting a specific toy, we used to have a little fake ice cream cone in our 2-year-old room that was literally the absolute favorite toy. And so I had to go out and buy like 6 of them, just so that way no one was fighting over that specific one, because the kids would like to bite the other child's hand if they were holding the ice cream cone. So I do see that Michelle popped on camera. Michelle, do you have anything to add?
I was actually just going to thank you for sharing some specific examples, because I know that, and something I always like to jump on and really validate for our providers is that you play such an important role. And I always say that, toddlers are such a critical age because there are so many behaviors such as biting that are occurring, and things that really, kind of force staff to slow down quite a bit. And sometimes it can be absolutely exhausting, as we know. And so, yeah, we just wanted to let you know that, we understand as regulators that these rules are in place in order to protect the safety and ensure children are being cared for in a safe and healthy environment. And so there has to be rules. And we also realize that sometimes it can be really difficult when you are trying to manage these behaviors. And so I love the way that we are trying to put this together in a way that really helps you understand what are the specific rules, why can we do the things that we can do, and why can't we do other things. And so that's definitely something that you're getting from this particular webinar. But the reason I kind of jumped on too is I just want to say we don't have the magic answer to all of the behavior issues that you're having, but certainly I will say that we do not hire licensors who have not worked in childcare centers. And so we definitely are here to really articulate and make sure that you understand what you can and can't do, and sometimes your peers. So if other people have great ideas too, those who are attending can put ideas about things that have worked in your program. I did see that somebody put in the chat that they're also dealing with biting behaviors in their young preschool room, and it's really tough. It's such a tough behavior because, obviously you don't want any child to be bitten, and we also really empathize with the child who's doing the biting because they have needs that are trying to be met. So that is a really, really tough one. But yeah, I just wanted to jump in and just really say thank you for providing all this great information for providers, and thank you to all the providers who are engaging.
I wanted to pop in too, 'cause in addition to what you just said too, after working 30 years, particularly with my favorite age group, which would be infants and toddlers. I love them all, but biting was a big issue oftentimes, and generally it's often related to the lack of or the learning, the communication style or being able to communicate their needs. So it's helping children kind of like scaffold the words that they might be saying helps them to kind of understand that, oh, I see that there's a need you're trying to express. This is what I'm thinking, so walking along the words with the children and saying, oh, it looks like you might need some more space. So just again, that's kind of a helpful tactic. But I really wanted to share is if you are looking for additional resources, the Center for Inclusive Childcare has great resources available for early educators, specifically on biting and how to address that. And so some great resources for you as well as for you to share with families. So that might be a great resource.
Yeah, and we do have at the end of the presentation, we'll go through those resources, and those are also included in the handout as well. Yes. Yeah, that language piece is a big one, and so I just want to quick also talk about the fact that children's emotions are legitimate and it's okay. Anger is a feeling, and we don't grow up and grow out of getting angry or sad or frustrated. So when you see those behaviors, understanding that's a learning opportunity to help them understand, what do you do as an adult when you're angry? Say, oh, it's like, oh, you're angry. You know what you can do? You can stomp your feet. Or you can say, I'm mad. Or you can go like this, just giving them some things of knowing that emotion, sadness, anger, frustration, those are legitimate emotions. Those are okay to have. We just need to learn how to express them in a different way. So, all right, let's move along here. I'm glad we were able to have some time to discuss those. So I want to talk about common unacceptable behaviors in childcare. So we'll just move to the next slide there. There we go. Thanks. So what kinds of unacceptable behavior do you most often encounter? Staff in childcare settings typically will state that these behaviors include, but are not limited to, disruptions of the schedule or routine, swearing or bullying, damages to the classroom or personal belongings, throwing equipment, children not participating in activities, kicking, pushing, hitting, biting, and running away from the group. So earlier, we discussed that separating a child from the group is a prohibited action. License holders must ensure that policies exist and are enforced that prohibit a staff person from separating a child from the group for behavior guidance unless less intrusive methods were tried and were ineffective, and the child's behavior threatens the well-being of themselves or other children in the center. If these conditions exist, then a separation is allowed as long as certain conditions are met. So, when a child has been separated from the group for behavior guidance, the following conditions must be met. The child must remain within an unenclosed part of the classroom within continuous sight and hearing by a staff person. They must be able to return, the return to the group must be contingent on the child's stopping or bringing under control the unacceptable behavior that caused the separation. The behavior causing the separation is not necessarily the first unacceptable behavior that the staff attempted to stop, but through the escalation of events, the behavior that causes the child to be separated from the group is the one that must be brought under control. For example, A child becomes frustrated because a block tower they were building was accidentally knocked over by another student. In reaction to this, the child knocks over the other towers being built by the children. Staff begin to intervene by speaking to the child and helping them rebuild their tower, but the child has now escalated their behavior by throwing blocks across the room, now putting others in danger of being hurt. A separation would be permitted here because less intrusive methods were tried and were ineffective, and the child's behavior threatens the well-being of themselves or other children in the center. Once the child has been separated and the child is no longer attempting to throw blocks, the child must be allowed to return to the group. Instructing the child to pick up all of the blocks that were knocked down before they can return would be prohibited because the child must be returned to the group as soon as that behavior decreases or stops. Consider the development of the child when determining what is an acceptable level of bringing behavior under control or stopping the behavior. Some unacceptable behavior may be undesirable, but not meet the criteria to continue to enforce a separation from the group. Are your expectations of child behavior at various developmental levels reasonable enough that children are likely to be able to do them more times than not? Expecting a group of toddlers to stand in line for several minutes waiting for staff to dress everyone to go outside is not reasonable. Toddlers are likely to get hot, tired, and in need of personal space and can bite one another because they are trying to communicate this need and have not yet developed the language to express this another way. A child between the ages of 6 weeks and 16 months of age, an infant, must not be separated from the group as a means of behavior guidance. It's also important to note that if a child has an ICCPP and possibly a corresponding IFSP or IEP that outlines specific unacceptable behaviors and specific guidance to mitigate, decrease, or stop the behaviors, that must be a part of the plan to return the children to the group per 9503.0065 subpart 3. So separation report. All separations from the group for behavior guidance must be noted on a daily log that must include the child's name, staff person's name, time, date, less intrusive methods that were used to respond to the behavior, and how the behavior continued to threaten the well-being of the child or other children in the group. Be sure to document parent notification as required in Rule 9503.0055 subpart 5. Posted on our licensed Child Care Center's webpage is Form DHS 5862, the separation log. Staff may use this document to log separations and help formulate behavior plans if required. Behavior plans are rarely written during an episode of unacceptable behavior, so it is important to capture as many details as possible when describing the behavior as soon as possible after an incident. Provide as much background detail as you can to understand the context of the unacceptable behavior and support the development of a behavior plan. It is a good idea to have someone review the log that may see patterns or triggers you may have missed. A behavior plan is required if separations occurred more than 5 times in a week or 8 times in 2 weeks. There is an area of required documentation for a behavior plan that is not in the separation report requirement. This could be an important distinction to make if using data from the separation report to help develop a behavior plan. The separation report requirements do not include any description of the behavior that caused the separation. It can be tricky to find the time to document separations when staff are already multitasking in multiple ways at any given moment in the classroom. Some staff may feel resistant to documenting separations, or they may feel like they're always documenting separations, but it is important to help everyone involved in the care of the child understand that not only is documenting separations required by licensing, it will help staff develop a plan around reducing problematic behavior going forward. So let's talk about persistent unacceptable behavior. Centers must have written procedures for dealing with persistent, unacceptable behavior that requires an increased amount of staff guidance and time. Procedures must specify that staff observe and record behavior of the child, that documentation is kept of the staff's response to each incident of unacceptable behavior, and that a plan is developed to address the documented behavior in consultation with the child's parent or guardian and other staff and professionals when appropriate. So children's behavior can be documented in a variety of ways. There are no requirements regarding how persistent unacceptable behavior is documented, just that it is documented. Some staff find using Post-it notes helpful because they can jot down quick details about the incident in the moment so that they can go back to the notes when they have time to fully document the incident. It's not important how staff choose to keep track of unacceptable behavior, just that those notes remain confidential and that they follow through with full documentation and that occurs afterward. So let's talk about behavior plans. Procedures for persistent unacceptable behavior specify that staff develop a behavior plan. However, licensing does not require a specific format, and DHS does not recommend a specific template or form. Basically, behavior plans must be developed in consultation with the child's parent or guardian, can include consultation with other staff and professionals when appropriate, uses positive strategies, does not include prohibited actions, uses the positive strategies as defined in 9503.0055 subpart 1, and again, does not include the prohibited actions as defined in 9503.0055 subpart 3. So, is a behavior plan required? How can we determine if the unacceptable behavior is persistent? Is the behavior requiring separation from the group? If yes, then how often? 5 times or more in 1 week? 8 times or more in 2 weeks? When the unacceptable behavior is requiring separation, when the unacceptable behavior is requiring separation this often, then the unacceptable behavior is considered persistent and a behavior plan would be required. So now let's take a look at a scenario that unfortunately too often can be a common occurrence in a toddler classroom, biting, like we've talked about. First, we need to take a moment to consider what we know about toddler development. The child that bit another child is 17 months old, new to the toddler group, and has less language than the other toddlers in the group. The toddler looks at staff when other toddlers are playing nearby, occasionally brings toys to staff to hold them for them, and prefers playing nearby a staff person. The toddler has bitten another child 6 times in the past 5 weeks, according to an injury log and daily notes, and is now being given activities to play with alone when biting occurs. This now requires staff spend more time and guidance with the child. Staff are concerned and have spoken with the parents and center leadership. So go ahead and answer yes or no in the chat as to whether or not you think a behavior plan is required for this toddler. See some answers come in the chat here. Okay, there we go. I'm seeing some answers and everyone's answering yes. The answer is yes. It is important to note that separations should be noted on a log, even when being done proactively. If staff are wanting to plan solitary activities for the child to prevent future incidents of biting, proactive management would necessitate a plan if separations continue as a part of avoiding incidents. Let's discuss another scenario. A preschool-aged child pushes, kicks, or hits during child-directed activity time. Staff have determined that the child hit another child in the block area because he or she wanted the car that the other child was playing with. According to a classroom notebook and the separation report, the frequency of this behavior has been 5 times per week, and lately it's been more. So go ahead and answer yes or no in the chat as to whether or not you think a behavior plan is required for this child. Wonderful. Yes. Lots of yeses coming in. The answer is yes. A behavior plan is required for the persistent, unacceptable behavior. If aggressive behavior is shown towards other children, it would not be necessary to have a separate plan for each type of behavior. So let's review. Can you identify behavior guidance requirements for children in licensed child care centers? Licensed child care centers have behavior guidance requirements for a center's policies and procedures for positive behavior guidance, prohibited actions, separation from the group, and persistent unacceptable behavior. I hope today is that you can explain positive behavior guidance, why modeling appropriate behavior is so important, and have an understanding of developmentally appropriate behaviors and expectations. After today, you can begin to apply redirection more into your teaching strategies and help teach acceptable behaviors for your students, as well as understand immediate and directly related consequences and why they are so important. So what next? You need to start thinking about implementing behavior guidance techniques and documentation requirements for child care center licensing. Also, think about staff training on the policies and procedures. Do you have the proper training? Do you need to ask your center management more about their policies and procedures to understand? What about separation reports? When and where are they needed? Does everyone know? And then behavior plans, if applicable. Do you feel comfortable understanding when a behavior plan would be required? A full listing of the requirements for licensed child care centers can be found in the Office of the Reviser of Statutes, Laws, and Rules at https://www.reviser.mn.gov. The link to this website is located in your handout. Saving Rules 9503 and Minnesota Statutes 245A as a favorite on your computer is strongly recommended. So there are a variety of resources out there to support childcare programs and staff. The Parent Aware website is our state's consumer website for childcare. The Parent Aware Star Rating System is a quality rating and improvement system, QRIS, for childcare providers. Participation offers recognition as a Parent Aware Star Rated childcare program, coaching opportunities, tools, free training, career building, scholarship programs, and grant funding. For assistance, you can email Child Care Aware at supportfunds@childcareawaremn.org or call 651-290-9704, again, included in your handout. As Lisa mentioned before, the Center for Inclusive Childcare offers free relationship-based professional development and support, modeling, and resources. There are 3 areas of coaching that are offered. First, inclusion support for providers as they seek to meet the individual needs of children through strategies, modeling, and support. Secondly, health and safety coaching to learn about best practices and new illness and accident prevention policies. And third, infant and toddler coaching to help find new activities, routines, and materials for serving infants and toddlers. Our state administration recognizes the increased need for greater mental health support and prevention services and has supported what is called Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation, a service offered by the Mental Health Consultation Services Unit of Minnesota's Department of Human Services. It is available to childcare providers, teachers, supervisors, directors, aides, food service, and transportation staff, really anyone working in early care and learning. They can provide assistance in creating environments to support the social emotional development of young children. Consultation includes a combination of training, reflective consultation, and skill building. Mental health consultation is available in all 87 counties and within 3 tribal nations. Services may be provided virtually or in person. Research has shown that services such as this are valuable, as having an understanding of children's emotional development and support while working with children can reduce staff stress and turnover in child care centers. This support also decreases mental health symptoms in young children, reduces the educational disparities experienced by children of color, reduces the expulsion of children from childcare and early learning, and increases early learning staff competence in addressing trauma, adversity, and early childhood and family mental health conditions. For more information, please email dhs.ecmh@state.mn.us. The Minnesota Department of Education supports a number of initiatives to help children receive the best start, including information on early learning scholarships. An early learning scholarship can help families pay for high quality childcare and early education to help children get ready for school. A scholarship must be used at a parent aware program. Parent aware is a rating tool, again, that helps parents select high quality childcare and education programs. They also have the Early Childhood Indicators of Progress, which are often referred to as ESIPs, and they are a common set of developmentally appropriate expectations for children ages birth to kindergarten. They have the Knowledge and Competency Framework for Educators that acknowledges research-based understandings of what an early childhood educator needs to know about research and theory, alongside the skills and abilities needed to work effectively in the field. The framework aligns vertically to the Board of Teaching Standards and horizontally to show a progression of skill development for early educators. This can be a good guide to help understand areas of training for staff in your program. It also has USDA information. So when food is provided to children by a licensed child care center, menus must comply with the nutritional requirements of USDA. The Minnesota Department of Education, MDE, provides USDA meal pattern requirements and a collection of associated resources to guide food purchases and food service to children. They also have early childhood screening. Children are required to receive a free and easy early childhood screening before kindergarten entrance, ideally at age 3. Screening is a brief, simple procedure used to identify potential health or developmental problems in infants and young children. Screening in early childhood supports children's readiness for kindergarten and promotes health and development. They also have early childhood special education services and many more resources. In addition, Minnesota's Help Me Grow is an interagency initiative of the state of Minnesota Department of Education, Department of Health, Department of Human Services, and local partners. Help Me Grow provides resources for families to understand developmental milestones and learn if there are concerns. They help families take the lead in seeking additional support or referring their child for a comprehensive confidential screening or evaluation at no cost. The Help Me Grow website is translated into Spanish, Somali, and Hmong. And as I have mentioned, our partners at MDE have developed and partnered with us to support this industry and the children and the families we all serve. Make sure to check out their website and save it as a favorite for these and many other valuable resources. The University of Minnesota Center for Early Education and Develop, also referred to as SEED, provides consultation to centers, support to achieve trainers, and relationship-based professional development specialists. They also have a reflective practice center and professional development. SEED offers a series of evidence-based tip sheets that explore topics of relevance to early childhood professionals, and each topic has an introducing it tip sheet and an applying it tip sheet. And these are great. If you've not seen them, I highly recommend you signing up for them. The introducing it tip sheet gives background information and current research about the topic, and then the applying it tip sheet suggests ways to implement your new knowledge in your work. There are tip sheets that address stress behaviors in young children, so they're great. We also at DHS licensing have our websites. So on our main childcare landing page, we have links to specific web pages for licensed childcare centers, family childcare centers, and certified childcare centers. We have fact sheets on licensed childcare. We have trends in licensed childcare. There are mandated reporter training videos. There is information on DHS compliance monitoring inspections, and information on ratio and group size requirements in childcare. Then specifically on the licensed child care center webpage, we have provider guidance in plain language. We have a news and updates section. We have statute and rule links. We have implementation plans for new legislation. We also have documents, forms, and resources that you either have to use, can use, or may want to use. And then, of course, all of our DHS contact information. The Child Care and Early Education News Reports Work Groups webpage has childcare news, reports, and then work groups. So as far as contacting childcare licensing, a licenser is available to answer questions Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. All voicemail messages and emails are returned as promptly as possible. And you can reach licensing by calling 651-431-6015 or by emailing the Child Care Licensing Unit at dhs.ccc.licensing@state.mn.us. Now, if you do have training related questions, the training specialists, myself and Lisa, can be reached at dhs.cclictraining@state.mn.us. So that includes the curriculum content of our training, but I do want to take a moment here to take a look and see how things are going in the chat and check in with my team. So Lisa or Michelle, are there things that we want to talk about with regards to some common questions that are coming up?
Hey, Rena, it's Jen. Yeah, Teresa had a good question and it just kind of got lost in all the chat. So we wanted to have a conversation about it.
I love it.
Teresa says, I would like to hear what DHS's thoughts are on temporarily removing a child from a classroom. Let's say a child is having an emotional fit or continuing to swear. This behavior can be unsafe for the other children, but just moving the child to an enclosed part of a classroom is not providing enough space to protect the other students. And sometimes the upset child needs the space to get through their upset. So yeah, I think we should have a conversation on this. My thoughts on this are, I think any DHS licenser would be reasonable enough to understand if little Johnny is, continually swearing, that you would like to remove them from the classroom. My question would be where's a safe place to remove them? Where we don't want the teachers to get hurt to remove Johnny if he's having a huge tantrum. We don't want the other kids to get hurt if Johnny's having a tantrum. So, using your best practices and just being smart about all of this. But the question becomes, where in a center are you going to remove them? The director's office is never a safe place, typically. It's got scissors and outlets and all that kind of stuff. So, thinking about where can Johnny have this temper tantrum, and maybe, it's just getting Johnny's mind off of it and going for a walk and redirecting him. Hey, will you help me, bring this to the toddler classroom? You got to hold my hand and we're going to take a walk down the hall. So those are some things that come to mind. Keith or Noko, anybody have any other thoughts?
I think that, yeah, go ahead, Keith.
I was just going to say that typically you don't want to remove a child from the classroom unless it's become a part of their behavior plan. I know that the situation that you are describing, Teresa, seems like it's kind of gotten beyond that. And we want to make sure that the kids in the classroom are safe, that the child having the fit is safe, that the classroom is still maintaining its ratio. But in general, I would say removing a child from the classroom would be the last resort.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing as you, Keith, is that we have seen where a decision is made in order to best support that child, and it's written into the child's behavior plan that a calming method for the child is to just walk down the hall and come back, get a drink, whatever those things are, and licensing would allow that. But again, you have to think about the full picture of like, is this occurring, and is this putting the other staff out of ratio so that the other children are not in a safe environment either. And so you just really need to think through some of those things in terms of that separation. But one of the things that we see And I don't know, I haven't looked at the data lately, but we have seen it in the past cited often is that it's kind of like this notion of sending a child to the principal's office. And sometimes that happens in childcare centers where, we use it as just kind of a quick consequence, like sending the child to the director's office. And so that's part of what we're trying to get across is that, there are separation requirements in place to prevent that, because that's not in the best interest of the child. That's not in the best interest of, that child's, safety, because as Jen pointed out, we often find a lot of hazards in a director's office. So yeah, that is something to think about. I hope that answers questions. I really appreciate the licensors answering, because you guys are the ones too out in the centers all the time, and you see these things.
I think you have to be careful as well, because in my history of working with children, eventually sometimes it can be a reward to go on a little special walk with one of the teachers. And so you really want to pay close attention to ensuring that now that consequence is not actually drawing the behavior. And so, always looking for ways other than leaving the classroom to stop the behavior is going to be right forefront of your mind for that one.
And I love what Noko just put in too. Ultimately, our goal is for them to be successful in the classroom, and to find the tools to calm and reset in the classroom. Yeah, and super helpful. Thanks.
And this is where then again, kind of my plug for some of the resources that are out there and available. As Rena mentioned, Parent Aware has coaching available. Center for Inclusive Childcare. Just a little example. When I worked as a director in a program, and we had a classroom in particular that was really struggling with some of the behavior going on, and it was really difficult. I mean, they were doing everything they could. They were doing an assessment of the classroom. They really knew the children in their care, and they had behavior plans, but it was really helpful to bring in another professional who has had an objective view and who was trained to be able to kind of take an assessment of the classroom. And we had a coach come in from the Center for Inclusive Childcare, and they were amazing support to sit back. They sat back, they kind of assessed what was going on in the classroom. They were able to provide, helpful tools based on what they were seeing in the children's behavior, as well as, what the staff were needing. Were there certain things the staff needed support with in the work that they were doing, or just a better understanding and just some little tools to kind of prevent these big things from happening. And so it was an amazing experience to work with with the coaches, and we're very lucky that we have these resources available.
Exactly. I agree. Somebody put in the chat that they did work with Center for Inclusive Childcare, and they're very helpful. So it's way back in the chat. So we're hearing that from the attendees. But I do want to say that somebody asked about, when children go to another classroom, is that something to report? And licensors, you guys can jump in too. But I think one of the main things that licensors do when they're out at programs, or if we receive information and we need to investigate it, is we ask additional questions. We seek to understand. So for me, well, why is the child going to spend time in another classroom? Is this a means of behavior guidance? So if you're separating the child to another classroom due to their behavior, then it definitely is a separation and you need to log it. But there are times where children move from classroom to classroom depending upon the center and the policies on a regular basis. And so if it's something that is just something that works in your center or for those particular children, it's not a means of controlling their behavior, we would just ask additional questions, if that makes sense. Can
I add something to that?
I would love for you to add. Yes.
When children are, if you're taking children to another classroom, you want to make sure that they're not, if it's a preschooler, that you're not taking them to a toddler classroom, that you're not
exactly,
shaming them that they're acting like a toddler. They're going to go to the toddler classroom or similar such information. If they're going to another classroom, it should be the same age, or it should be an empty classroom where they can calm down, but never to a younger classroom.
Or even, sometimes people inadvertently create another situation where they're, violating another licensing requirement. So, a program that's mixing during the regular hours of operation, mixing children of different ages, you can't exceed that 36-month age span. So you could, accidentally, in trying to do some of these things, violate other licensing requirements. Yeah. So thank you, Keith, for jumping in and pointing that out.
Very much. We did have a question about the specific guidelines to write a behavior plan. So I thought I could real quick, just quickly remind everyone. And Lisa, I don't know if you want to, but it is on, it's slide 32. But just as a reminder that they have to be developed in consultation with the child's parent, and they can include consultation with other staff and professionals. Those positive strategies need to be included, and that they can't include prohibited actions. So that's from licensing, that's where we have it. That's the minimum requirements for a behavior plan. Now, the template or the best practices that you have with regards to the policies and procedures for your center, that may have extra stuff that you have to put in there, but at minimum, those behavior plans need to have positive strategies in consultation with the child's parent and cannot include any prohibited actions. So there we go.
Maybe we should address Jenny's question about, we had a parent question why we don't suspend children for unacceptable behavior. It's not something we've ever done. We would like to know what licensing says regarding suspension or expulsion. A lot of that is just knowing that all of these behaviors are so appropriate. And yes, there are some over the top behaviors, but trying to get that child the help that they need before you suspend them to maybe go fail at another daycare, or figuring out the core of the behavior. And what, yes, daycare is maybe not for everybody. It can be overstimulating. The ratios might be hard to manage, but overall most of the children do pretty well in there, and just trying to get the child the help that they need, rather than terminating everybody's enrollment who gives anybody a hard time. That's not real developmentally appropriate either, nor the status that you want your center to be known for. So I think it's good that you've not ever done that. Yeah, there are certain situations that it doesn't work, and certain behaviors that could lead to that, and that's dependent on your company. The licensing doesn't say you can or cannot do that. That's up to you and your company and what's written in your parent handbook. But really using some of the resources before you reach that decision.
And becoming a parent does not mean that you instantly understand ages and stages of children and developmental milestones and what's developmentally
or group
appropriate.
childcare.
Yeah, you folks are the experts. So when a parent brings a question like that to you, look at it less of like a judgment question, but they just need to be informed. And the slide that's up right now, the Center for Inclusive Childcare, and not just CICC, but there are oodles and oodles of research articles out there that are talking about the need to reduce suspension and expulsion rates in schools. And so especially when we're dealing with the world of early childhood, where the world is brand new to them, of course every behavior is pretty much going to be tried, that we have to let them have that space to know, oh, I shouldn't do this, this is what I should do instead. So helping parents, give them that education, and then leaning on those resources that are around, so you can say, you can find a little bit more information here. It will be helpful to have parents understand why or why not you do something.
We should let our friends at Center for Inclusive Childcare know that we had a tremendous number of people here and we really sold their services. But I will say, we do as a state need to, as part of our federal the Child Care and Development Block Grant Act and the CCDF plan that we are required to write, we do have to address how we as a state try to help in this area of preventing suspensions and expulsions. And that's part of how we spend our dollars, is through providing funding to programs like Center for Inclusive Childcare, so that they can support our providers, so that ultimately we are able to keep children and support children, keep children in childcare and support children. There are times, where, there are extreme behaviors. And I think Jen had mentioned sometimes, group childcare can be really difficult for children who have extraordinary needs. And we work through all of those things. But I love what Rena said too about helping parents. And yeah, we've got so many resources in our state that I would really encourage people to tap into those resources.
Yep. And then just real quick touching on, there's been like peppered in questions about the slides, sharing the slides, or is the recording. So yes, we are recording this, and the intention is to get all the closed captioning done and have it posted on our website so that it can be kind of an anytime viewed. So then you would have access to what is on the slides, but as well, the handout includes the majority of the information, but I do understand that there's some additional information from the slides that you'd like to have. So that's why it's being recorded and why we're hoping to get it posted soon. So the only difference between today's live training and the recorded training is that those that did develop or provide their Develop ID will receive Develop credit for this, whereas we are not able to provide Develop credit for the people that watch at any time, because we have no way to show that there was attendance. But just work with your director and say, hey, I'm going to sit down and watch this 2-hour behavior guidance requirements training, and they should be able to record that towards your yearly in-service credits. So
we did there was another mention just kind of about staff not being, trained to handle a lot of these situations. And I just want to put, there are also, in addition to these sorts of resources that we're sharing, there are great resources the state is also providing to help professional growth of staff of the early education field. Childcare Aware of Minnesota has a lot of great resources available to help with professional development, as do there are other resources, again, a lot of these coaching opportunities. And as we mentioned, Help Me Grow, and Rena mentioned the Center for Early Education and Development. There's numerous opportunities to help staff have a better understanding of child development and behavior guidance that are out there. The Minnesota Develop system has numerous trainings also available on, aside and up and beyond and above licensing requirements, such as this training, but that are available to kind of help support the staff to be able to understand and do the jobs that they are doing, the very important jobs that they're doing, working with these fabulous little children. So.
Yep. Yeah, and to piggyback also on that as well, the regulation modernization that's occurring, that's a big heavy word to just say Rule 3 is being revised. So that is going on right now. The revised standards are in draft, and there are opportunities to participate and have your voice heard. So you can visit our website to find out more information about regulation modernization and how to get involved. So recommend, if you want your voice heard, I think you should definitely hop on there. And yes, if you registered using your Develop ID, the credit will show once I enter the attendance. And again, I just want to remind everyone that we had 400 people register, over 400. So it will take me a little bit of time to do that data entry. So just give me a few extra days this time. I'd say if you don't see it by the end of next week, go ahead and contact us. But we should be working on it diligently over the next few days after this presentation. So. Oh, thank you. So,
yeah, I appreciate the comment. We do have somebody asking for a recommendation for how staff can balance getting documentation completed, the separation log, the things that they have to document, and they might not have as much time available as they're directly working with kids. So I don't know if we have a lot of years of experience in this room between Keith, Jen, Noko, Lisa, Rena, and myself. So does anybody have any great thoughts or ideas of how you manage that?
This is Noko. I would always just encourage my staff to just to put like the quick snapshots of it on a post-it note and then record it at nap time when all of the kids were resting, or because you have at least 30 minutes there, and to document it at that time. And that seemed like it worked really well for them.
Yeah.
I have some programs that have tablets in the classrooms, and they record the information and then transfer it to a log at lunch or nap or another quiet time in the day. I thought that was pretty ingenious.
Yeah, that great. And yes, see, this is why I said you guys have ideas. Emily said that she bought voice recorders for her team so they could quickly record the note about what was happening and then go back to it later.
That was going to be my suggestion. It's a game changer, voice recorders for teachers.
Yeah.
If they have,
So
if
many-
you can have
so
them.
many great ways. Yeah.
Well, and Liz just pointed out too that she has notes to look at whenever she has doubts about what you might have remembered, because it is just helpful to jot things down as you see, if you can,
Yeah.
it is
Because we all
helpful.
think we're going to remember. And I, as a director, I always used to tell all of my teachers, because they would tell me a variety of things that I needed to order or do something for them. And I would always say, if you don't see me write it down on a Post-it, it never happened. So it's a normal human thing. You're like, I'm going to remember, I'm going to remember, I'm going to remember. And then your day goes on. So getting it right in the moment, just jotting whatever shorthand you can, or quickly saying a few quick words will help jog your memory. So.
Yeah, geez, I hope we didn't miss anything. This was a really vibrant conversation. We appreciate the participation. This will be recorded so other people can hear these great ideas later. And so, the goal of this, and I want to just point out, Rena and Lisa have done a tremendous job. We're really fortunate that we were able to bring on training specialists in our area, and they've been working really hard on all the important things like accessibility and being able to get closed captioning added so that we can record these presentations and get them posted on the website, because we have heard from you providers to say things like, yes, it's great, I can attend this during nap time, but I really want my staff to see it too. So now if there was an area in here that really spoke to you, that that you want some of your teachers to be able to listen to and spend some time, and it's recorded, teachers can listen to it at a time where you don't have to shut down the center and bring everyone together. There's just so much flexibility. And so I know Lisa and Ren are really committed to providing additional trainings like this. Lisa does have one that she's going to be providing on filling out the, yeah, go ahead, Lisa. You tell them the news.
I'm looking it up just to confirm. So July 25th from 12 to 2, we will be doing an updated version of our ICCPP training. So the individual child care program plan training. So come back.
Yeah.
Tell your friends.
So yeah, and somebody said, how about on-demand training? We are taking all of these steps, and that is something on our list, but our first goal is to get this recorded. So the first thing is get it recorded so it can be, in a sense, an on-demand training. It's not the same thing as on-demand training, I realize that, but in a way it does put that information, at your hand, in your hands, so that you can use it with staff. And we do have, again, like even getting ourselves registered in Develop to ensure that you could get Develop credit. And we've really, again, Lisa and Ren are just so committed to what we're doing to support providers. So you will see additional trainings coming out on topics, especially now that we can record them. We don't have to keep revisiting the same training, because that's the thing that happens as well. We provide trainings and then have to continue providing them. So now we will have more options. Yes, I heard Spanish too. That is also something leadership within our licensing division is aware of, is that we really need to have more resources available. So yeah, I appreciate all of you guys continuing to ask and allowing us the opportunity to continue to grow in this role so that we can offer the support. So yeah, great. I think all the information about the Center for Inclusive Childcare coaches and parent aware stuff is in the handout, right? I think
it is all in the handout. And yes, I think the question was, are they going to be able to easily find how to access the coaching that's available? through the website. And yes, the websites I think are quite user friendly. And so it'll point you in the right direction when you're there, because you're going to log in and it's going to say, are you a parent or are you a provider? So you should be able to find your way through the web page. And then just a last little plug too about what we offer in addition. And when we talk about anytime learning, we do have 6 quick little videos that we do. They're e-learning videos, and that we originally kind of designed for people that were new in the application process for licensing, but they are applicable to licensed childcare centers and understanding the requirements, and they're broken up into sections. So they're small, they're short, they're 7 to 10 minutes long. And they go over the requirements for policies and procedures is one of them, or the requirements for the facility, or the requirements for training, staff training. So those are there, and feel free to check those out too, and take that time. Those can be logged on to and watched at any time. So
Yeah, good way to point that out. And those, when those videos are watched at a later date, this one included, those things can be logged as in service. So yeah, I'm going to try to put a link to those e-learning videos in the chat. I think that should work, but
there we go. Well, I don't want anyone to feel like they're missing any major content. So we'll sort of end the recording at this point, but we'll stay on for another 5-10 minutes to answer any questions that might come up in the chat for those folks that felt like they still had an additional question. But I want to thank everyone for coming today. I really hope that you are able to take some of this information back to your classrooms and utilize the wonderful utilize your wonderful positive modeling and behavior techniques. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.